You shouldn't be watching this.
The Nightwatch. Some jobs aren't worth the money. I learned that the hard way. Let me tell you what really happened at the Meridian Tower during my brief stint as night security. Because what's in the official report is sanitized corporate nonsense. They called it vandalism and break-in attempts, blamed it on transients and urban explorers, then quietly increased their insurance premiums, then pretended nothing unusual had occurred. The truth is, dead employees don't clock out. But David Chen never got the memo. I'd been unemployed for 3 months when I saw the posting on Indeed. Night Security Guard, Meridian Tower, Downtown Financial District. 12-hour shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., Monday through Friday. The pay was good, suspiciously good for what should have been a straightforward job watching an empty building. The Meridian Tower had been vacant for 8 months. The investment firm that owned it had gone under in a spectacular fraud scandal, and the building sat empty while lawyers fought over the assets. 42 floors of abandoned offices, conference rooms, and cubicles, all waiting for someone to claim them or tear them down. My job was simple. Walk the building every 2 hours, check the doors, make sure no one was trying to break in or squat, keep the lights on so it looked occupied from the street, file reports, collect paychecks. Easy money, I thought. What could go wrong? I should have known better when they hired me without an interview. Just a phone call from building management, a few basic questions about my security experience, and a request for my social security number. No background check, no drug test, no meeting in person. They just needed someone to start immediately. Previous guard had to leave unexpectedly, Mrs. Rodriguez explained over the phone. Family emergency. You comfortable working alone? Not a problem. Good. The building's been empty since March, so you won't have any tenants to worry about. Just make your rounds, keep an eye on things, and call us if anything seems unusual. She emailed me the key codes and building schematics. Pick up the keys from the lockbox on the ground floor, clock in at the security desk, follow the checklist. Simple. My first night was a Tuesday in September.
I arrived at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, and found the building exactly as advertised. Empty, clean, and eerily quiet. The lobby was all marble and glass, the kind of corporate elegance that screamed, "Serious money," even when nobody was home. The security desk was a small station near the elevator banks, equipped with a computer, phone, and a thick logbook for documenting the nightly rounds. The previous guard had left detailed notes about the building layout, emergency procedures, and a schedule for the security walks. But it was the visitor log that caught my attention. Every building has one, a simple ledger where guests sign in and out, listing their name, company, purpose of visit, and time of entry and exit. The Meridian Tower's log was bound in black leather, thick as a phone book, with entries dating back years. Most of the recent pages were blank, as expected. The building had been vacant for months. But as I flipped through the last few entries, something seemed off. The final entry was dated 3 weeks ago, August 15th, during the day shift, before the building was officially vacant. A delivery driver had signed in at 2:30 p.m. to drop off office supplies, signed out at 2:45 p.m. Normal. But below that, in different handwriting, was another entry. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services, 11:47 p.m. No exit time. No purpose of visit. Just a name, company, and timestamp. I flipped back through more pages and found other entries for David Chen scattered throughout the past few months. Always late at night, always from Meridian Financial Services, the investment firm that had collapsed, always with no exit time recorded. Probably the previous guard's mistake, I figured. Maybe he'd been letting employees come back after hours to collect personal items, forgetting to have them sign out. Or maybe David Chen was just sloppy about completing the log. I made a note to ask Mrs. Rodriguez about it and started my first round. The building had 42 floors, but my route only covered the first 20. The upper floors were sealed off. No power, no heat, no reason for anyone to be up there. The elevator required a key card to access floors 21 through 42, and I didn't have one. Floors 1 through 20 were a monument to corporate ambition. Executive offices with floor-to-ceiling windows, conference rooms with mahogany tables, cubicle farms that at once buzzed with activity.
Everything was still in place, as if the employees had just stepped out for lunch and never returned. I checked doors, tested windows, looked for signs of forced entry or vandalism. Everything was secure. Everything was normal. Just empty offices and the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence. By the time I returned to the security desk at 9 p.m., I was starting to relax. This was going to be an easy job. Then I looked at the visitor log. There was a new entry, written in blue ink, David Chen, Meridian Financial Services, 8:23 p.m. I stared at the page, trying to process what I was seeing. I'd been alone in the building for over an hour. I'd walked every floor, checked every door, and seen no one. The building was locked from the inside. The only way in was through the main entrance, which required a key code I'd used myself. I checked the time, 9:15 p.m. According to the log, David Chen had entered the building while I was making my rounds, less than an hour ago. But there was no exit time. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and started a second round of the building, this time moving faster, checking corners and closets I'd skipped before. I called out, identifying myself as security, asking if anyone was in the building. No response. I checked the main entrance, still locked, alarm still armed. The loading dock was secure, the fire exits were locked from the inside. If someone had entered the building, they were either still inside or they'd vanished into thin air. I spent 2 hours searching, then gave up and returned to the desk. The visitor log showed the same entry. David Chen, 8:23 p.m., no exit time. I called Mrs. Rodriguez and left a voicemail explaining the situation. Possible break-in, no sign of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder. I documented everything in my incident report and tried to push the worry out of my mind. Maybe someone had a key I didn't know about. Maybe David Chen was authorized to be in the building and I just hadn't been informed. Maybe the previous guard had left the entry in the log and I'd somehow missed it on my first check. Reasonable explanations, nothing to worry about. Wednesday night, I arrived early and checked the visitor log immediately. No new entries since my report the night before. I made my first round at 8 p.m., checking every floor carefully, looking for any sign that someone had been in the building. Nothing. At 10 p.m., I returned to the desk and found another entry. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services, 9:34 p.m. This time, I was ready. I grabbed my radio and started a systematic search of the building, floor by floor, room by room. I checked elevators, stairwells, storage closets, even the bathrooms. I called out, demanding that whoever was in the building identify themselves. The building was empty. I reviewed the security footage from the lobby cameras, but the system was old and the image quality was poor. I could see myself entering the building, walking to the elevator, returning to the desk, but I couldn't see anyone else. Either David Chen was invisible, or he had another way in and out of the building. I spent the rest of the night researching. The building had been constructed in 1987, renovated in 2003, and had housed a dozen different companies over the years. Meridian Financial Services had been the most recent tenant, occupying floors 15 through 25 from 2018 until their collapse in March. I found news articles about the scandal, embezzlement, fraud, investor losses in the millions. The FBI had raided the offices, seized computers and files, arrested several executives. The company had folded overnight, leaving employees without jobs and investors without money. But I couldn't find any specific information about David Chen. Thursday night, I came in with a plan. I set up a small camera at the security desk, pointed at the visitor log, and started a time-lapse recording. If someone was entering the building and signing the log, I'd catch them in the act. The first entry appeared at 8:47 p.m. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services. I reviewed the camera footage immediately. The time-lapse showed me sitting at the desk, then leaving for my rounds. The logbook was clearly visible, closed, with no one approaching it. Then, in a single frame, the book was open with a new entry. Someone had signed the log between camera frames, faster than the eye could see. I called Mrs. Rodriguez again, this time reaching her directly. "David Chen?" she said when I mentioned the name. "I don't think we have anyone by that name authorized for building access. Are you sure you're reading the signature correctly?" "I'm looking at it right now. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services. He's been signing in every night, but never signing out." "That's impossible. The building's been empty for months."
I know, but the entries keep appearing. There was a long pause. Then, "I'll look into it. In the meantime, if you see anyone in the building, call the police immediately." After she hung up, I sat at the desk and stared at the visitor log. The handwriting was neat, careful, consistent. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services. Always a precise timestamp, always in blue ink. I flipped through the older entries, looking for patterns. David Chen had been signing in regularly for months, even after Meridian Financial Services had collapsed. The entries went back to March, when the building was still occupied, but they continued through the summer, long after everyone else had gone. On my 2 a.m. rounds, I found something new. Floor 18 had been Meridian Financial Services' main office space. Executive offices along the windows, cubicles in the center, conference rooms along the interior walls. I'd walked through it dozens of times over the past 3 nights, and it had always been empty. But now, there was a light on in one of the corner offices. I approached carefully, flashlight ready, radio in hand. The office nameplate read, "David Chen, Senior Vice President." The door was open, and I could see inside. The office was exactly as it had been left 8 months ago. Desk, computer, family photos, a coffee mug with a ring stain on the bottom. But the computer was on, the screen glowing with a screensaver of tropical fish swimming in endless circles. I stepped inside and checked the desk. There were papers scattered across the surface, as if someone had been working recently. The mouse was warm to the touch. I checked the timestamps on the documents. They were all dated within the past hour. Someone had been in this office, working at this computer while I was making my rounds. But I had seen no one, heard nothing, found no trace of an intruder. I sat down at the desk and opened the computer's file explorer.
The recent documents were all financial spreadsheets, budget reports, client portfolios, standard business documents, except for one detail. They were all marked as final reconciliation and dated with tomorrow's date, as if someone was trying to finish work that had been left incomplete. I backed out of the office and continued my rounds, but the feeling of being watched never left me.
Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound seemed amplified. The building felt different. Not empty, but waiting. When I returned to the security desk at 4 a.m., there was another entry in the visitor log. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services. 3:18 p.m. 3:18 p.m. Not a.m. Tomorrow's date. I called Mrs. Rodriguez and left another voicemail, more urgent this time. Then I started researching David Chen more thoroughly, using the building's Wi-Fi and every database I could access. I found him in the Meridian Financial Services employee directory, archived on the company's old website. David Chen, Senior Vice President, Risk Management. 15 years with the company, MBA from Wharton, survived by his wife and 2 children. Survived by. I found the obituary in the local newspaper, dated 3 years ago. David Chen, age 45, died in a tragic accident at his workplace. The elevator in the Meridian Tower had malfunctioned, trapping him between floors during a power outage. By the time rescue crews reached him, he had suffered a heart attack. The accident had happened on a Thursday night during the overnight shift. He'd been working late, trying to finish a project before a Friday deadline. He'd been alone in the building. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what I'd learned. David Chen had died in this building 3 years ago, but someone or something had been signing his name in the visitor log every night for months, working in his office, using his computer, accessing files that had been sealed when the company collapsed. The rational part of my mind insisted there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe someone was using David Chen's identity to access the building illegally. Maybe it was industrial espionage, or someone trying to recover hidden assets from the Meridian collapse. But the irrational part of my mind, the part that had been growing stronger each night, whispered a different possibility. David Chen never left the building. He was still here, still trying to finish his work, still clocking in every night like a dedicated employee, still trying to meet that Friday deadline. Friday night, I almost called in sick, but I needed the job, and Mrs. Rodriguez had promised to meet me at the building to discuss the situation. She was coming in at midnight with a locksmith and a technician to check the building's security systems. I arrived at 7 p.m. as usual, but this time I brought backup, a digital recorder, a better camera, and a friend on speed dial. If something happened to me, at least there would be evidence. The visitor log was empty when I started my shift. I made my first round at 8 p.m., checking every floor, every office, every corner. The building was empty, silent, waiting. At 10 p.m., I found the first entry. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services, 9:43 p.m. This time the handwriting was different, less careful, more hurried. The letters were cramped, desperate, as if written by someone in a hurry. I made another round, moving faster this time, checking David Chen's office first. The light was on, the computer running, but the screen showed something different. A single document, repeated hundreds of times, filling the screen with the same message: Friday deadline, must finish. Friday deadline, must finish. The text was growing, multiplying, cascading down the screen like a waterfall of obsession.
I backed out of the office and continued my rounds, but I could feel the building changing around me. The temperature was dropping, the shadows were deepening, and somewhere in the distance I could hear the sound of typing. Fast, frantic, desperate. When I returned to the security desk at midnight, Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting for me with a locksmith and a security technician. She looked tired, stressed, like someone who'd been dealing with problems she didn't understand. "Show me the log," she said. I opened the visitor log to the current page. There were now 5 entries for David Chen, all from tonight, all with increasingly erratic handwriting. 9:43 p.m., normal handwriting. 10:15 p.m., slightly rushed. 10:47 p.m., cramped, urgent. 11:23 p.m., barely legible. 11:54 p.m., shaky, desperate. "This is impossible," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "The building's been empty for months. No one has access codes except you and building management." The security technician was reviewing the camera footage, shaking his head. "I'm not seeing anyone on the cameras, just you walking your rounds, no one else entering or leaving." "But the entries keep appearing," I said, "and there's something else. David Chen's old office." A sound interrupted me. The elevator, moving between floors. We all turned to look at the indicator lights above the elevator doors. The car was rising. 5, 6, 7, 8. "That's impossible," the locksmith said.
The elevators are locked down for the night. The elevator continued climbing. 15, 16, 17, 18. It stopped at 18. David Chen's floor. Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed her radio and called building security. "We need backup at the Meridian Tower. Possible break-in. Intruder on the 18th floor." But I knew it wasn't a break-in. It was David Chen, still trying to get to his office, still trying to finish his work, still punching the clock 3 years after his death. The elevator started moving again, descending. 17, 16, 15. It was coming down. "We need to leave," I said. "Now." "We can't leave," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "If there's someone in the building—" The elevator reached the lobby level. The doors opened with a soft ding. No one stepped out, but I could smell something. Coffee, aftershave, and something else. Something stale and cold, like air that hadn't been breathed in a long time. The security technician stepped toward the elevator, flashlight raised. "Hello? Building security? If anyone's in there, you need to identify yourself." The elevator doors stayed open. The interior was empty, but I could hear something. A soft scratching sound, like a pen on paper. I looked at the visitor log on the desk. A new entry was appearing, written by an invisible hand. David Chen, Meridian Financial Services, 12:07 a.m. But this time, there was more. Below the signature, in the same desperate handwriting, additional text was appearing. "Friday deadline. Must finish. Need more time. Need more time. Need more time." The elevator doors closed. The car started moving again, climbing toward the 18th floor. Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed my arm. "We're leaving, now!" But as I headed for the exit, I made a mistake. I looked back at the visitor log one more time. There was one final entry, just appearing as I watched. James Morrison, Night Security, 12:15 a.m. My name, my job title, today's date, but below it,
In the same handwriting that had been signing David Chen's name for months was an exit time, 12:15 a.m., the same time as the entry. I never got to finish my shift. Mrs. Rodriguez found me at the security desk an hour later, when the backup security team arrived. I was sitting in the chair, staring at the visitor log, completely unresponsive. The paramedics said I was in shock, catatonic, possibly suffering from a complete psychological break. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, another month in therapy.
The doctors said I'd experienced a severe panic attack, possibly triggered by working alone in an empty building for too long. They prescribed medication, recommended counseling, and suggested I find a different line of work. The official report blamed everything on stress, isolation, and an overactive imagination. The visitor log entries were explained as unconscious self-documentation. I'd been writing the entries myself during periods of dissociation, creating an elaborate fantasy to cope with the loneliness of the job. But I know what really happened. David Chen had been trying to finish his work for 3 years, showing up every night, signing in like a dedicated employee, trying to meet a deadline that would never come. He'd been alone in that building, just like me, trapped between floors, trapped between life and death. And when he saw me in the visitor log, when he realized I was there every night just like him, he decided I should stay. The building was demolished 6 months later. The city claimed it was structurally unsound, that the elevator system was a safety hazard. But I know the real reason. Some places hold on to their employees too tightly, and some deadlines can never be met. I work in retail now, daytime hours, surrounded by people. I've never taken another security job, never worked alone in an empty building. But sometimes late at night, I get calls from unknown numbers. When I answer, I hear the sound of typing, fast and frantic, and a voice that's barely a whisper. Friday deadline, must finish, need more time. I hang up, but the calls keep coming. And sometimes when I'm walking through the store where I work, I'll find papers scattered on the floor, financial documents, budget reports, client portfolios, all marked as final reconciliation, all dated with tomorrow's date. David Chen is still working, still trying to finish his project, still punching the clock. But now he's not alone. Because, according to the visitor log, I never signed out either. Some jobs don't end when you quit. Some employees never leave. And some deadlines follow you wherever you go. If you ever take a security job in an empty building, if you ever find yourself alone with a visitor log and too much time to think, remember this: always sign out when your shift ends. Because if you don't, you might never leave, and there's always more work to do.